Hi guys, back again with me. How are you, loyal viewers? Do you really miss the cool movies that give you goosebumps? Relax, because this time I will discuss and review a horror movie released in 2023. The movie revolves around a woman named Emma, who works the night shift at a morgue in order to uncover the identity of a mysterious psychopath, a figure who has caused her parents deep trauma over the past 3 decades. Curious how the story goes? Instead of taking too long, let's get straight to the discussion. And don't forget, if you like the content on this channel, click subscribe so you don't miss other scary videos. The story begins with Emma, a medical student who is busy tracing the legacy of her late mother. Her mother died at a young age, leaving deep emotional scars on the family, especially Emma's father, Martin, who is often hit by panic attacks. As Emma combed through the pile of relics, she accidentally came across old newspaper cuttings. The articles revealed a shocking fact. When they were young, her father and mother had been the survivors of a brutal attack by a psychopath known as Warmer. The incident happened 30 years ago when her parents were on night duty at the morgue. Knowing this, Emma felt compelled to uncover the dark past to help her father recover from his trauma. She decides to take the night shift at the morgue where her father used to work, hoping to find clues about the identity and whereabouts of the psychopath who had terrorized her family. Upon arrival, Emma was met by a security guard named Icy. He said that Emma was recommended directly by Dr. Edo. Before starting work, Icy took Emma around to get to know the place.
Nogle gange kommer de også op dernede fra. Det begynder at stinke hernede. Vi hellere tage et kig herop i obduktionen.
However, he also warned that the location was known to be haunted and screams were often heard from the autopsy room, as if someone was being tortured. Despite hearing the warning, Emma remained indifferent and instead immediately asked about the psychopathic terror that had occurred there in the past. Icy agreed that a bloody incident had indeed occurred. A psychopath with a cutlass had terrorized the hospital. According to the story, the psychopath was believed to have supernatural abilities because even though he had been sentenced to death, he never died and was finally only locked up in a mental hospital. Icy asked Emma to prepare herself as best as she could before starting work the next night at the morgue. The next day, Emma ventured to tell her father that she would be working tonight at the morgue, the same place where her father used to work. Hearing this, Martin's face immediately turned pale. What had been an ordinary atmosphere suddenly turned quiet and tense. When night fell and all the staff had gone home, the place became completely deserted, as if inhabited only by curious spirits. Even so, Emma's spirit did not falter. She tried to remain calm, even though she was beginning to feel the presence of an invisible aura. While checking room by room, including the morgue and autopsy room, Emma was suddenly startled by the faint sound of female screams. Between belief and doubt, Emma finally felt the supernatural disturbance that Icy had previously warned her about. In the morning, in a state of panic and anxiety, Emma rushes to see her best friend, Frederick. Without much ado, the guy who had just woken up was immediately greeted with an anxiety-filled confession over a leisurely coffee accompanied by a modest breakfast. Emma then told him that her mother had been severely traumatized by being terrorized by a psychopath with a cutter mask. Since then, her mother has lived under pressure, always feeling watched and followed by a mysterious figure. The feeling haunted her so much that one day, Emma caught her mother trying to end her life under a rambutan tree in the yard. Now, seeing her father starting to show similar signs, Emma felt she had to do something. She wants to prove that the psychopath named Warmer is helpless, and will never be able to hurt anyone again. She hopes that if she can uncover the truth and close the old wounds, her father can return to a normal life, free from the shadow of fear. Although his plan sounds reckless, Frederick can't help but give his full support. Long story short, when she arrived at the mental hospital, Emma argued that she was a psychology student who was conducting research on a legendary psychopath named Warmer. Hearing this explanation, a security guard named Johan immediately took her inside and agreed to take Emma to the isolation room where Warmer was locked up. On the way, Johan explains that Warmer, once known for his brutality and inhumanity, has now aged and weakened. In fact, he suffers from a visual impairment that makes his eyes very sensitive to bright light. Before Emma entered the room, Johan gave her an alarm device as a form of anticipation in case something untoward happened. When she first saw Warmer, Emma could not hide her anger. The image of the old man's cruelty towards his parents made Emma's emotions explode. To convince herself that the man was now helpless, Emma turned on her cell phone flashlight right into Warmer's face. Sure enough, Warmer immediately groaned in pain and struggled, showing that he was completely weak to light.
Kun de her sørgelige rester tilbage.
The alarm went off, and Emma decided that a short experiment was enough. She prepared to leave. But just as she was about to leave, the door suddenly locked from the outside. Emma panicked and started calling for help. In her confused state, she saw something that astonished her, although it was unclear what exactly was happening. Moments later, a doctor named Bumper approached her and asked about Emma's purpose for coming to the isolation room. Calmly, Emma explained that her purpose was only to see Warmer's condition firsthand, a psychopath who had destroyed the lives of her parents, Martin and Musi. Hearing those two names, Bumper looks shocked, remembering them as survivors of the psychopathic Cutter tragedy decades ago. Emma went on to say that her intention in coming here was to help her father out of his prolonged trauma, by showing that Warmer was now nothing more than a helpless old man. But according to Bumper, what Emma has done may not be enough to heal her father's inner wounds. He offered to get professional help to conduct a direct psychological examination of Martin. Hearing the offer, Emma is relieved and promises to deliver the good news to her father soon. Some time later, Emma ventured to tell her father that she had visited the mental hospital where Warmer was being treated. She also explained that she had gone to see the psychopath firsthand. Without delay, Emma showed a video recording that showed that Warmer was now just a decrepit old man who had lost his strength and was unable to commit any more heinous acts.
Jeg har opsøgt ham for at vide alt. Tilbage. Med den psykiater. Det her! Traumerne var det her!
After showing the footage, Emma pleaded with her father to start living in peace, let go of the burden of the past, and bury all the fears that had haunted them for years. Not only that, she also informed him that there was a mental doctor named Bumper who was ready to provide assistance to restore Martin's mental condition professionally. But behind the tranquility, there is a dark conspiracy that is being arranged. Elsewhere, someone is seen making a mysterious mask. That person turned out to be Bumper himself, who was secretly working with one of the hospital staff to carry out the evil plan that had been prepared. Warmer, despite being imprisoned, was still giving orders. One of his missions was to order a man named Ban to get rid of an important target, a religious figure named Nai Komala. It didn't take long before Ban went to a place of worship to meet Komala. Without saying much, he showed her the writing on his hand that bore the name Warmer. Komala's face instantly paled. She panicked as soon as she saw the legendary name that should no longer have surfaced.
Der er lige sket noget.
Til Martin Borg.
The band's presence in the place created a stir in the crowd. Shortly afterward, a corpse was found with wounds typical of a psychopathic Cutter attack. This immediately led many to suspect that Warmer had managed to escape from the asylum. But a detective named Karma denied the speculation. He emphasized that Warmer was still in custody and was unlikely to get out of his place of confinement. Even so, as one might guess, the real threat does not come from Warmer directly. There are unseen parties, collaborators and accomplices, who continue Warmer's sadistic actions and spread new, equally dangerous terror. Feeling worried about her father's unstable mental state, Emma finally asks Maria for help to cover night duty at the hospital. Before leaving, Emma reminds Maria that her job is to sit in the administration room and record reports, apparently quite simple. With a casual tone, Maria even told Emma to go home and rest. However, unbeknownst to them, the band had already infiltrated the morgue area with a sinister plan. In the stillness of the night, Maria suddenly saw a creepy masked figure slowly approaching her. The next morning, the hospital was in a panic. Maria was nowhere to be found. After searching all corners, it is discovered that Maria has been held captive by the band and an accomplice of the psychopath Warmer, a notorious bald man. In the holding room, Maria tried to persuade the band to release her. He honestly says that he knows nothing about their plan. But when she mentions Emma, the slow-witted band misunderstands. He thinks she's a masked figure resembling the psychopathic Michael Myers thereafter. The situation becomes even more chaotic because of the identity mix-up. Meanwhile, Martin finally fulfills Emma's request to consult with a psychiatrist named Dr. Guntur. In the consulting room, Martin shared the inner burden that he had been harboring. He reveals that since the comet incident they experienced in the past, his life and his wife have never been peaceful. They felt as if they were being stalked and loved by an invisible entity. It was this pressure that made his wife, who had lost her grip on faith, finally decided to end her life by hanging herself under a rambutan tree. On the other hand, Maria, who was still being held captive, finally managed to find out the true identity of the masked figure who had been mentioned. Seeing an opportunity, Maria took advantage of the bald man's negligence. With ingenuity and a bit of acting, she managed to fool the band.
Den må gerne komme ind og lægge hende sig.
When circumstances allowed, she fought back and killed the bald man. After getting rid of Band, Maria immediately received a call from Emma, who was on her way to the mental hospital with Detective Charmer. Emma sounded relieved when she heard Maria's voice and immediately inquired about her whereabouts. However, a tense Maria was quick to warn that Emma and her family were in grave danger. Stammering, Maria reveals the shocking truth: the real psychopath is no longer Warmer, but her own daughter, Dr. Bumper. She apparently inherited a bloody legacy from her father, Warmer the Cutter Knife Psychopath. Dr. Bumper now continues the mission of terror, with the main target of completing unfinished business in the past, killing Martin, Emma's father, who was one of the victims who managed to survive 3 decades ago. At the same time, in the consulting room of the mental hospital, Martin is having a conversation with Dr. Guntur. While talking, Martin unwittingly drinks the poison tea. Before long, his body began to stiffen, paralyzed instantly. Dr. Guntur, who had been on Bumper's side from the beginning, took Martin to be handed over directly to Warmer. Moments later, Martin, who could not move his body, was forced to face his nightmare from the past again, Warmer. Now, the vile man is old and blind, but his hearing remains sharp. Paralyzed, Martin tries hard to force his body to get up, even though his nerves no longer seem to function. Meanwhile, Emma, who has just arrived at the mental hospital, immediately rushes to find her father. In her quest, she crosses paths with Dr. Bumper. Detective Charmer, who accompanies Emma,
Hvor er hendes...
almost makes a rash move against Bumper. Luckily, Martin managed to gather the strength to make an epic comeback.
Hey, Martin.
In the fierce battle, the psychopath was finally killed by his own weapon.
Der du.
Back to Emma, the atmosphere feels calmer and safer. She immediately tried to find a way out of the hospital. Luckily, they all survived and eventually managed to find their way out. After being evacuated, Emma and Martin were relieved that everything was over for good. Time passed, and now Martin and his family were seen enjoying a vacation at the beach. Emma is even calmer when she sees the bright smile on her father's face, who is now free from the fear caused by the psychopath's terror. The core of the story is about a psychopath who failed to kill Martin 30 years ago and feels he has a debt to pay. Even though he is old, he doesn't lose his mind by sending his daughter, Bumper, and his accomplice, Band, to continue the action. However, thanks to Martin's courage and determination, everything is uncovered and he is finally free from the trauma that has haunted his life. That's all for this movie discussion. Thank you very much for watching until the end. I hope you enjoy the story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss other interesting videos. See you in the next video.